happy Friday to you, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on UpNorthLive Unscripted at 6:30. It feels so good to finally be here on Friday. Nothing but the weekend ahead of us for, of course, only 2 days. But Trevor, how is the weather looking this weekend?
Well, I think overall it looks a lot better than what we have seen for the majority of the week. You know, there are some days, looking back, there were some days that actually were fine if you don't count in the haze, right? The second you add the haze to it, it kind of changes everything a little bit. Now, unfortunately, we do still have some haze before anybody questions me about that. We do still have some haze in the forecast over the weekend, but not as bad as it's been for the majority of the week. So that's getting out of the way slowly but surely, and it looks like, fingers crossed, that it'll be gone by the end of Sunday into Monday next week. Okay. Otherwise, beyond that, we'll have some warm temperatures and lots of sunshine. We don't have any rain in the forecast until very late Sunday into Monday morning. So yeah, great weekend ahead overall. So if you have any plans, you won't have any problems there. So we'll talk about that. I'll cover the next chance for rain and more when we return to the forecast in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you so much, Trevor. Our top story tonight, a Grand Traverse County man who brutally assaulted his wife will spend at least a decade in prison. Rudy Galvenden stood in front of a judge for sentencing this morning, and Up North Live, Cody Bear has more.
The life I had envisioned is gone, and I am only a shadow of the person that I once was.
Rudy Galvenden's ex-wife speaking in court Friday. In March, Galvenden pleaded guilty to assault with intent to murder.
I will never look the same as I previously did. I will always experience the inquisitive gaze from others wondering what happened. And for the rest of my life, I will have to look in the mirror and see a reflection that reminds me of my trauma.
Deputies found Galvenden in July of 2022 near his Blair Township home, holding his 9-month-old baby when he told deputies his wife was dying.
He thought, in fact, at that point that he had killed her, based on actions that he had taken against her physically. That is clearly an intent to do great bodily harm or create a very high risk of death.
Galvenden's ex-wife says she believes Rudy Galvenden doesn't deserve a decade or more in prison, saying his actions were out of character.
I can attest that the assault only occurred because he was in a state of drug-induced psychosis, which, unlike intoxication, involves a complete detachment from reality. Rudy genuinely believed that he was dying.
With a chance to speak to the judge, Rudy Galvenden said the same.
I'm horrified by what I've done. It's just awful. This was an isolated incident. I'm really not a violent person.
The prosecution says that isn't an excuse to get less prison time.
This was someone who was a husband, a father, who had an infant child in the home with him, and who had continued to use these substances behind his wife's back, and took that risk when he did that. Voluntary intoxication or being under the influence voluntarily is not a get out of jail free card.
Ultimately, the judge sentenced Galvenden to 12 to 20 years in prison.
I do think that there is significant work that you need to do with regard to your own mental state, and some time in prison is going to assist you in that.
In Grand Traverse County, Cody Bear, Up North Live News.
And Cody is going to join us live now from our content center with more on this story. And Cody, after listening to everything that was said in the courtroom today, what are some details that you weren't able to include in your story but you think are worth mentioning now?
Yeah, so there were definitely emotions that maybe you didn't quite see when you're listening to the statements, because a lot of them are prepared, but there were a lot of emotions in that courtroom. You could kind of see it, and every now and then, you know, tissues were out and tears were there. So it was an emotional time because there was a lot of, you know, trying to have that mix of compassion and everything else when it comes to that. A lot of the debate that I kind of mentioned but didn't go too far into was psychedelic mushrooms is what Galvenden was under the influence of that night, and that was really what the sentencing came down to. Was the defense was also, you know, you could kind of hear talking about how, yes, so he was under the influence and that had to play, and you could hear Galvenden say it was an isolated incident, while the prosecution, as you heard, said, you know, that's not an excuse for that behavior, and ultimately the judge agreed with the prosecution, and that's why he ended up getting those 12 to 20 years.
Do we have any other information about exactly what happened that night that led to this incident?
The biggest thing was that we have, that I know of at least, is after the incident, he was walking around and he was knocking on doors. Rudy Gavaldin was knocking on doors in the neighborhood in Blair Township. And at first he was saying he was dying, and then deputies say when they got there, he told deputies that his wife was dying. So that was some of that information that happened the night of that I wasn't able to fit into that story.
Anything else that you weren't able to fit into that story that you learned from the sentencing today, or that you know about the incident that, again, we haven't talked about yet?
Sure. The 12 to 20 years fact, that's, of course, a big gap of 8 years between the 12 and the 20. And what the judge said was that first number is up to the judge. The second number is up to Rudy Gavaldin and how he does in prison. So he currently has a credit of more than 700 days that he spent in prison up to this point in the sentencing. So the judge said you essentially have 10 years, and how you act, and if you accept counseling in prison, then that's how, we'll find out what that second number is, and he'll have the chance for some early release programs. So that was one big thing at the end that I want to make sure people know, is that's where the 12 to 20 years kind of is affected.
Sure, and we did hear from Gavaldin in your story. He had a pretty brief statement that you included. Is there anything else that he said during sentencing today?
One big thing is he did apologize. His ex-wife was in the courtroom, so he apologized to her, and even though his children weren't there, apologized to them, and then went on to mention how it was, like you heard, the isolated incident is what he said.
Is there anything else from the ex-wife that she shared during her statement today that wasn't in your story that you want to mention?
Actually kind of similar, which was a lot of, not apologizing, but talking about the kids and how tough this is for them. They have 2 sons, and it's a really, really tough situation going on for them. And a lot of it, that's where, his ex-wife mentioned, like, she has dealt with trauma, and this has been catastrophic for them, but she's torn between, this is also father of 2 of her children. So that's where a lot of, the emotion was it's that tough split for everyone involved.
Well, Cody, thank you so much for sharing that emotion from the courtroom with us. Is there anything else that you want to mention before we do let you go?
Maya, I think that's all I have for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for joining us on Unscripted and digging a little deeper into that story. We have all the details over on our website, UpNorthLive.com, as well as links to previous stories about when this case originally started, if you want to know any more information on that. Okay, switching gears now, we are highlighting a new way to control the population of invasive sea lamprey. A new study has been published by local fishing agencies, and our Trevor Robideau, who's kind of doing double duty today as reporter and meteorologist, he spoke to officials about that research and what this could mean for the future of sea lamprey control.
The sea lamprey is a resilient creature that has stood the test of time for millions of years. Originating from the Atlantic Ocean, this fish has caused numerous health and population problems for native fish in the Great Lakes for over 100 years. Traditionally, existing methods to control sea lamprey have been successful.
Sea lamprey control's been very successful. It's reduced lamprey numbers by 90%, and it's primarily done using lampricides to kill larval lampreys in streams, and then barriers to block access to spawning habitats.
But in a recent study, a new method was hypothesized that could save resources. It involved preventing sea lamprey from spawning.
Normally, we would just euthanize those adults and put them in a landfill. But the theory and the idea is if you could take an adult male, sterilize it, release it into streams, if it then mates with a female and they both die, it's a dead end. They stop, you stop the life cycle.
Nick Johnson, a researcher at the Hammond Bay Biological Station and lead author for the study, set out to test if sterilizing male sea lampreys would further reduce spawning numbers in regions that they typically struggled with, including the Maple, Pigeon, and Sturgeon rivers.
We had a long history of production of sea lampreys in Pigeon, Sturgeon, Maple, and then we could go in and change the system in terms of adding sterile males, and then seeing if the number of larval lampreys went down in subsequent years, and then if the need for the lampricide treatments also went down. And what we found is that the number of larval lampreys in the systems went down by over 90%. And then the need for lampricide treatments also went down.
The study thus far has proven successful, and further research is being done to test viability in the future.
There is a limitation that we need to kind of keep in mind in that we can't necessarily get unlimited number of males to sterilize. So how much the sterile male release technique could be applied in how many streams is still unknown, but it's something we're testing now.
In theory, this research shows this new method can be another tool used in sea lamprey control.
It's certainly not an alternative to the traditional barriers and lampricides, but it does offer potentially some solutions in streams where it's very difficult to use the traditional controls.
In northern Michigan, Trevor Robideau, Up North Live News.
And you'll hear much more from Trevor with the weather coming up in a few minutes, but we have a few more stories to share with you before we bring Trevor back in. Some exciting news for music lovers in northern Michigan. Castle Farms is bringing back the good old days. Today it held a ribbon cutting ceremony to celebrate the start of bringing back concerts. Now tonight is Nostalgia Night. It's the first of many concerts they plan to host, and the headline is local band Derailed. That'll be at 7 o'clock tonight, so about 20 minutes from now. Organizers say people are of course still reminiscing on the concerts they held back in the 70s through the 90s. Thousands would fill into Castle Farm to hear some pretty legendary rock stars and also some pretty legendary local singers.
Anybody you can imagine from AC/DC to ZZ Top played here, and it was the place where everybody wanted to play, and it was the place where everyone wanted to come and have a great time and hear some amazing bands. And 30 years later, people in the town are still talking about this.
And we're told that this time Castle Farms is focused on recreating the original experience, but with more safety precautions. The concerts will be held both indoors and outdoors, but with smaller crowds. Now we're told that Castle Farm is working on getting more concerts set up and is currently talking to different musicians. All right, well, again, it is Friday, so pretty much the weekend for most people who are watching, almost the weekend for us folks here at Up North Live. But if you are a fisher person, an angler, I should say, or if you like to get out on some trails, well, this weekend is the perfect weekend to do that because locals and out-of-state visitors will be able to fish, ride off-road trails, and visit state parks free of charge. It is all part of the Michigan DNR's annual 3 free weekend. Tomorrow and Sunday, you can fish for all in-season species, legally ride state designated routes and trails, and visit any of Michigan's state parks and any of their boating access sites, all for free. And because some state grounds are still dealing with ice storm aftermath, be sure to check with the DNR before heading out to any potential fishing spots or trails this weekend. But that prompts our question of the day today. Let's take a look at it. How often do you typically go fishing? You can scan the QR code on your screen right now to vote, and maybe you haven't gone fishing in a while. Well, sounds like this weekend is the perfect weekend to dust off the old pole and hit the water for free. As of right now, it looks like actually most people, 41%, are saying they never go fishing. I indeed voted for that. And a lot of other people are saying, oh, it's just every once in a while. I actually talked with someone today. I'm working on a story about fishing, and he was out at Boardman River in Traverse City, and he said, yeah, this is my 4th day in a row fishing. So he voted clearly for several times a week. Okay, let's take a quick break, but as I promised, we are going to check back in with meteorologist Trevor Robideau. He will have much more on the forecast for your weekend if you do want to get out and go fishing or hit some trails. All of that straight ahead.
I'm Jada Johnson from Big Boys TV, and the Fish and Game Report is sponsored by Johnson's Propane.
Sounds like it should be a pretty nice weekend, but it also sounds like that haze and smoke is going to be lingering in the skies a little bit longer, right, Trevor?
That is right. Now, we're hoping these last few days being tomorrow and Sunday, will be the last of it, at least for a while. Now, sometimes we've seen this before. I seem to remember a couple summers ago when I was first starting out here, we had problems with Canadian wildfires, and it was a thing all summer long, like multiple times we've had it come back, and it was a huge thing. And so, well, it may depart on Sunday into Monday morning. That doesn't mean it's going to be gone for good, because those Canadian wildfires will sometimes burn for several days, if not weeks. So we'll keep you updated on that as we progress through time. But at least for now, temperatures are in the 60s and low 70s today. Very cloudy day overall today. Pretty moggy, a few rain showers throughout the region. The good news is that a lot of that cloud cover is beginning to thin out. Showers are beginning to end. A few light showers still lingering around through parts of the eastern upper and Luce County and far northwestern Chippewa County. And a little more cloud cover up that way too. As I mentioned, throughout the remainder of tonight, a lot of that cloud cover is going to continue to thin out. By tomorrow morning, we should have mostly sunny skies, and it should stay that way for the majority of the day. So if you have any plans to be outside, and in particular, we talked about the free fishing weekend. If you have plans to go outside and take advantage of that, no problems. Lots of sunny skies around tomorrow, very few clouds, and no rain outside from the isolated chance for maybe a sprinkler or two in the evening with a system that's going to pass way to our south. But that system may give us a few isolated showers, as well as some passing clouds overnight Saturday into Sunday morning. A few clouds will be around potentially on Sunday before we inevitably go back to more sunshine for the afternoon, and then we'll have the cold front passing through late Sunday night into Monday morning. That'll be our next chance for rain and maybe a few embedded thunderstorms. Here's a look at our updated air quality. It's been a story all week. We still have the yellow for moderate air quality index. It's not nearly as bad as southern Michigan right now, especially in the Detroit area, Kalamazoo, where they're in very unhealthy to unhealthy regions of smoke right now. We showed that camera earlier in Detroit and Southview, and it looks absolutely horrible there right now. They have visibility well below 5 statute miles. Here's a look at the forecast for that. As I mentioned, this smoke is going to still be lingering around pretty much all week. At times, it'll be worse than others. At times, it won't be bad at all. I think overall, the story is it'll still be lingering around for the next couple of days. But the hope is by the end of Sunday, that smoke will begin to move northward as we have a southerly wind that's going to push it away. UV index forecast pretty on the low side for the next several days. The one day to look out for being tomorrow, Saturday, where we have a UV index of 7 for all the sunshine. So maybe you want to wear some sunshine if you have plans to be out tomorrow. Otherwise, 42 to 52, partly to mostly cloudy overall, but again, thinning clouds. A few showers that we do still have coming to an end in a light northeast wind. We'll start with a northeast wind in the morning tomorrow that'll transition to more out of the southeast as the day progresses. A lot more sunshine, temperatures ranging from 70 to 80. Overall, really nice day, still a little haze. Rain comes back into the forecast late Sunday through Monday. Temperatures will drop a little bit Monday and Tuesday below average with those rain showers lingering around. But overall, temperatures right around the average and a fairly typical June week here in northern Michigan as temperatures begin to rise at the end of the week towards the high 70s and low 80s.
All right, thank you so much, Trevor. We are going to take another quick break, but coming up next, we'll check in with sports director Harrison Beebe and see what stories he's working on today in sports. That's straight ahead. Welcome back, everyone. Let's check in with sports director Harrison Beebe, who has been busy tonight. Harrison, where are you joining us live from?
Maya, I am at Big Rapids, where Big Rapids is not playing. It's a neutral site here for a neutral site girls soccer regional championship game. We're in Division III. It's our last area soccer team left in the state tournament, and they're in some trouble here about to enter the second half. Traverse City St. Francis, they've had a great season, have the Glads, talented goalkeeper, a lot of good goal scorers, but have yet to put a goal in the net today. It's 2-0. Grand Rapids Catholic leading it, about to start the second half. I'm looking at the scoreboard with, you can't tell with my sunglasses on, but so we got a half to go here. St. Francis fighting to get in the semifinals and maybe the state finals next week if they can get another win or two here. We'll wait and see as we really enter in the home stretch here for the spring sports season. We got 1 week to go because we know baseball and softball state finals will be next weekend as well.
Still a lot of time left to make a comeback, so can't give up on the Glads just yet. And folks, of course, can get updates tonight on Up North Live News at 11. Harrison, what else is going on tonight that you were going to report at 11?
Maya, the big one in Major League Baseball, I heard standing room only seats were tough to get for Tigers, Cubs. And you might have wanted to go to the game because you're going to have a tough time finding it on a channel. It's on Apple TV tonight for Game 1 at Comerica Park. So if you can't get that subscription figured out, we'll have you covered for highlights of the Tigers and Cubs Game 1 as well. Two best records in the major leagues entering here, what is it, June 6th? So
yeah,
pretty crazy stuff to think Tigers are still on top and the Cubs are right there. It's a classic rivalry. They've played in World Series from like 100 years ago. So these are two of the long-standing programs in Major League Baseball, and we got to see them at Comerica Park now that we have interleague all year round.
It's interesting because in weather, we've been talking about how much smoke is over the Detroit area. So I'll be intrigued to see those highlights to see if Comerica Park is looking a little hazy tonight, because over our Southfield camera, it is just covered, blanketed in smoke.
Yeah, something to be. I'm actually heading to Detroit tomorrow, so that's good to know for me as well.
You'll have to send us live footage from your time in Detroit.
We'll do an unscripted show on Saturday.
Perfect. All right, Harrison, get back to the second half of that game. We will see those highlights coming up tonight on Up North Live News at 11. But stick around. We're going to take a quick break. But next, we're going to check out our question of the day and the live results. Stay with us.
Salon services are furnished by Epiphany Advanced Academy in East Acme.
Well, this weekend is the 3 free weekend where you can go to any state park and fish. You can enjoy the trails on your ORV all for free. So our question of the day today, we're just curious, how often do you go fishing? And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people are saying never, me included. A good amount though, 33% say once in a while, 16% several times a month, 12% several times a week. And again, gonna be a great weekend weather-wise to go out fishing, and again, it will be free. So that'll do it for Unscripted tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.